Sure. Okay. So yes, California Prison Focus. You can go to prisons.org. It's pretty easy. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's not all. None of that's handled by me, but yeah, California Prison Focus.
And I'm currently was just I was recently awarded a Soros Justice Fellowship, and thank you. And so I'm working on a big project. In order to follow me and find out more about that project, you can go to TroyWilliamsJournal.com, and that'll lead you out to all the other work that I have going on.
And in the back, we have the strike. We have the demand list of demands, but on the very back, we have an assortment of different. We have JLS, Jailhouse Lawyers Speak, with the actual spokespersons for the strike, and updated updates of strike activity that's happening. There's a lot of strike flyers back there. Also, prisonstrike.com. Prisonstrike.com. That's where you go, clearinghouse for all the information. IWW_IWOC on Twitter. That'll have all the up-to-date listed actions as they come out. Hunger strike starting in Tacoma at a detention center facility, phone zap starting tomorrow as one example. But there's a number of lists on the back table.
Cole, let me just ask you, because sometimes I just go to YouTube and I just, start putting things in the story and stuff comes up. Did you guys establish a channel yet that you're going to try to put all your information so people can go right there?
Yeah, that's the goal that's the goal, the eventual goals. First we get it all lined out. There is actually someone that I spoke with today that's going to try to get all of the actions that have happened throughout the country. North Carolina, prisoners came out. I don't know if anybody saw the pictures. There was 100 prisoners on the inside of the fences, and in solidarity to the people like us outside San Quentin, they ripped up their sheets, made banners, said we're here, we're in solidarity, listed their demands across racial lines. So those kinds of things we'll be updating regularly. So yeah, we plan to have all that in a media format so everybody can see the pictures. Yeah.
And which format? That's YouTube?
Not yet. Now it's just through Twitter and Instagram.
At the sites that you already outlined. Okay, so that was IWW/IWO.org?
IWW_IWOC. And all listed on the back pages back there.
All right, so there's information in the back. Thank you very much for that question. That was obviously useful. Next person.
My name is N, and I am a teacher at a local high school and an organizer in Boise, Idaho. I have also previously served at a juvenile detention facility. Since then, throughout my experience studying education and social justice and being involved with youth activists in my community, I have seen the way systems of oppression and violence permeate through punishing, expelling, and stripping the right of education for students, who are most are students of color. Most of the time, these students are just lashing out, while in terms they are just being loud, and that was the case for me. I was arguing with my teacher, and I said I was being too loud. The result of these systems in school is that most students are more likely to be incarcerated straight after high school. I wanted to ask you, what do school systems and our youth educators need to do to mitigate this school-to-prison pathway common across the country?
School to prison pipeline.
Well, my humble opinion is that, like we talk about these systems, right? And it's hard to deal with a system, right? What does that mean, right? Systems of oppression, like seriously, like what does that really mean? Like it's some person. It is a person that is in that school that is judging another person for their ignorance, right? Because they don't understand who it is that they're judging. They don't understand that culture. They don't understand that person, and they have their own biases. So people need to get called out for who they are. Teachers, they need to get called out for who they are and what they're doing. I learned the truth about my history from being on a tier in a prison. And I'm talking about, not when you think of my history, don't just think of my history as a slave. Like, that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem. Our history has been hidden from everybody. And so when you see somebody black or African American and you think about their history, you think about slavery, right? You don't think about the richness of our history, right? And so that does us an injustice. So in my humble view, the textbooks and schools all across this country need to be revamped. We need to strike there. All right? It's so much going on that is just wrong that we just really have to take a look at and call it for what it is. Call out, and not to shame somebody necessarily, but if that's what it takes to get the job done, but to call out people for what they're doing to other people.
I was going to mention that educators in and of themselves, we had an event, I forget what it was, I think it was before Trump was elected, it was in here, and IWalk had an event on that side, there was another event on this side, but there was an educator from way north, I forget what county that was, but it was way 2, 3, 4 hours north, and he said it was rural area, very much affected by lack of jobs, drug use, no father figure, a lot of, typical rural conditions, and that he was at an alternative school and also worked at a alternative high school, and asked after he heard what I had said in my experience if I'd be willing to go up there. So I think there are opportunities, although there are curriculum developed for teachers to follow, that they can still, like this teacher has done, allow a platform for someone like me, of revolutionary, to come up there and talk prison abolition, kind of under the radar. I gave them flyers from bifolds talking about flooding cell blocks. They didn't read it because they just saw me as coming in teaching the kids how to stay out of trouble, But I'm sure later, once they maybe read it, they probably took it back. But the point is that the seeds were planted, and teachers can do that. And this teacher has done that and now has still just actually texted me recently, and these students want to correspond with prisoners, so they're going to send their own letters addressed, and then we're going to send them in, depending on the situation of prisoners that we have, some that haven't had correspondence in 20 years or any family member or any contact. Then they get a letter from a 12-year-old that says, you know what, I know about you, I've heard about you, your story impacts me, and I'm in a situation where I could be you. That's what I was faced with, except for the difference in color. I was in that situation where Cole, old man, sat me down at the chess table and said, now it's your turn, you have 2 felonies. Your turn to determine whether you're going to spend the rest of your life in here with me, or you're going to, try to change it around. And not to say that you'll succeed at that, but at least for that fact, there are educators that can break out of the traditional curriculum and are trying to give to the students and let them know through different ways, like letting former prisoners come and speak to the students, letting students write to prisoners, humanizing them, recognizing that it's not what society, the state, or the jury, or the judge has decided that they are, that they're criminals. They're not. None of those things. They're our family members and their sisters and our brothers, and that's what I think educators can do.
Yeah, I'd like to, shout out to both of you. That's so true. And again, as community members, we need to know what's going on in our schools and what our teachers are doing, because it really is, again, about that, the humanizing. Kids are kids, and we are allowing people to get away with what they're doing. we have to step up as a community because people can't do it on their own. They need to be called out. We don't get to be complacent. So it is important to call out those teachers that are allowing alternative ways of doing it. And the ones that aren't, we need to call that out. We need to not let our children, those children are part of our community. We have to be responsible citizens and community members as adults. And it is about, in order for them to do what they're doing, they have to do it without anybody challenging them. And also, you know, what Troy was talking about around the oppressor. That's an age-old, we could change the textbooks for sure, but it's about dehumanizing. Again, it's labeling people as something. You know, those kids are, they're loud and disruptive, and they're being labeled and dehumanized and called something that can justify their treatment. And we have to stop allowing those justifications to take place.
Thank you very much. Okay. Whoa. Okay. Please.
Hi, my name is Ellen. I'm a reentry career counselor. So I try to support people coming out to find jobs with that felony that they have, or 2 or 3 felonies. So first of all, I want to thank all of you for being on the panel. I also thank you also for doing this national strike, because I also have a son that's incarcerated. And I feel like nobody talks about what's going on inside. I mean, I know myself because I've worked with the population coming out for years. But when my son went to prison, even though I know that black and brown people are affected more than people of my race, it still was a big shock when I went and stood in line and there's nobody that looks like me in line. Nobody. And I'd like go, what do you mean? You know, no white people commit crimes? You know, it's just like really hits you in the face. So also I like your idea of also talking to the media, because nobody wants to talk about this. And I will tell you, I talk to every single person. All the people I work with, you know, my son's in prison. I tell them what happens in prison. Everybody I meet on the bus or on the BART or where I get my hair cut, everybody knows. And they know everything, because I want them to know that people go to the chow hall, they don't have silverware to eat with unless they bring their own little plastic fork. They have to eat with their hands. I want them to know they're on lockdown 24/7 sometimes for weeks and months at a time. They don't get out of their cell, no showers, no yard. You know, I want people to know what's really going on, because I think the media is a big problem, and you have a good idea about content, because they can't get in there. The CDCR doesn't want the media in there because they don't want people to know what's really going on. And then just one other thing real quick, because I'm a career counselor and I try to support people coming out, there's 2 bills that Roots and Rebound is supporting now about certification. Because once you come home from prison and you have a felony, you can't get a state certification. You can't be a security guard, you can't be a cosmetologist, you can't be a barber, you can't have your own construction company. No state certification can you get. So there's 2 bills that are going on right now. One is AB 2293 and the other one is AB 2183. Those are both scheduled by Roots and Rebound, so I would encourage you, please call your senators, call your assembly, tell them you want those bills passed. People deserve to earn a decent wage when they come home. Thank you.
Yes, can we have our next speaker, please?
Hi, everyone. I'm wondering if any of you has a comment about SB 10, which is the bill to replace money bail with an individualized assessment of the person who's being charged. And it seems fairly likely that the governor is going to sign that bill, as I understand it. And if do you have any insight or opinions about what the implications would be if that bill is passed? Thank you.
The little bit that I know is that, yes, it will end money bail, so it sounds like it's just kind of put a Band-Aid on the language, but it's actually going to detain and incarcerate more people. So that doesn't sound like the bill that it started out to be. That's what I'm understanding.
It's the individualized assessment is why we wound up in jail in the first place. So that's kind of scary to me, individualized assessment, right? So I'm hearing that there are people who were initially, the bill was rewritten and changed, and that the way it was originally written, more people were in favor of it. But I am not a proponent of the so-called individualized assessment. That seems more scary to me than the bail money.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out, just as I think the 13th pointed out, is that during the civil rights movement, and even during the labor movement prior to that, the power structure tosses us bones to appease us if we get too unified and get too scary to the structure that they've created. And so some of those things are that they've done in the penal system is closing of Rikers. Oakland, Iowa has an original piece that they've done research on, and we've and actually since been quoted from it because of the actual research that's been done in regards to it. But there was this great uproar. Great, they're going to shut down Rikers, this crazy, terrible prison or jail that so many people, horrible atrocities have happened in, things like that. All these people are getting shipped to other places. No one's getting out. Nothing's changing. The same with private prisons. Obama said, we're going to end private prisons. That was at the federal level. It affected about 12 facilities, 13 maybe. All those people got shipped to somewhere else. They didn't decrease numbers whatsoever. So they say these things to appease us, or no bail, the ability to get out on no bail. It's all a hoax. At the end of the day, it's all just to smooth over and get people to the next step, so they're less angry that we continue to incarcerate more and more, particularly Black, brown, LGBT people. So things like that are just a Band-Aid. The dam is going to burst at some point, so we need to facilitate that burst of the dam as far as I'm concerned.
Well, thanks for busting my bubble. God damn it. Hey, thanks. I was actually just making a snide remark. I didn't know. They are considering two bills regarding the police in the state legislature right now. One is Senate Bill 1421 for transparency. The other is Assembly Bill 931. And I mean, I don't like what you call gossip type of stuff when I don't know. But I read the original bills, and I have been told they amended those bills. So now, it was to the better or the worse. To be honest with you, I'm going to shut my mouth because I haven't read the amended versions. But what a difference a comma makes. Oh, let me tell you. So they have been known to do this. Please, sir.
Thank you. I want to make something explicit that I think we kind of overlook as maybe obvious. Speaking to individualized action instead of the systemic change. Don't call the cops. Just do not call the cops on people. That will be one sort of immediate kind of cure. You can spread that mentality easier than you can spread let's end cash bail, let's have community policing, let's have sort of what can seem like pie in the sky ideas. You can more easily tell your friends, Uncle Bob, family, don't fucking call the cops on anyone in your community unless someone is actually being murdered. Just don't call the cops.
Yes.
Hey guys, I was wondering if you could talk about two different things from a larger perspective. I wonder if you could address the fear that whites have or seem to have in America of white minority becoming a present reality, and how to address that fear in a way that maybe will help us to get to a place where we can reform things. In other words, maybe where we can begin to talk about things like truth and reconciliation and the real kinds of things that we need to do to address systemic change in our country. addressing the fears that people have and pushback that we commonly get when you start talking about prison abolition. People say, well, what are we going to do about crime? Yeah, can you talk about those things?
Yeah, not necessarily, but the first thing I want to say is race is a construct, first of all. So I think, you know, in the broader sense, what we're killing ourselves off by how we're operating, period, with, you know, white, black. So race is a construct. I don't know if that really answers your questions, but that's kind of what comes up for me in terms of, you know, a minority. You know, so that's just what I want to say about that first. But I think I'm going to take a minute to think about your other question and pass it on.
What was the second part of his question?
The first part was about how to address
The fear.
the fear of white minority and the idea that whites will be persecuted in the same way they've been persecuting others. And then the second part of the question is about pushback that you get when you talk about prison abolition and people's responses. What are we going to do about crime?
Right. Well, yeah, I don't really know how to address the first part of the question. I think that's a conversation that really white people have to have with themselves. And from the outside looking in, it's about them being afraid of losing power. Right. So, yeah. I mean, you know, if you go around and you always beating and treating and kicking on somebody, and one day you expect what you've given out, right? And that's, once again, that's back to the pathology, right? That's back to a person's own issue. So, as far as what are we gonna do about crime? Like, I think there are a lot of models around the world where you have countries that actually don't have a lot of crime because of the way they treat people, right? We built a system up around oppression and dominance, and somehow we expect for there not to be some kind of backlash from that, right? Like, I don't know, it kind of just blows my mind. Like, if you always kick the dog or you always kick the cat in the corner, one day the cat gonna scratch you, right? So we have to look at how we treating people, right? Or am I somebody who says that, and this may not be a favorite with the crowd, but it's the truth, where we are at right now when people say, like, get rid of the police department, right? I don't know how that's gonna happen right now. I'm just saying, I'm just being real. From somebody who grew up gangbanging and growing up doing the things that I did, and knowing that there are other people who think like that right now, knowing that there are still certain parts of this country that, you know, not only are we afraid of the police, right, but sometimes when, you know, somebody in their house and something going on and a woman getting kicked or beat on by her husband, who's she gonna call? Right, so we gotta not fool ourselves with our own solutions. Right? Yeah, or in a utopian land, maybe we won't need that, right? But I don't know a country on the face of this planet that does not have one. I just don't, right? So I think that whatever solutions, however we come up with them, that we have to just be realistic in our solutions, but we also have to start treating people right. And we all have to start looking at our own biases and how we interact with people and how we view other people, right? Even like, yeah, we fighting for people in prison that are stuck in prison right now, but I still know that there's a lot of misperception that people have about who's in prison, right? On both sides of that equation, because there's some really brilliant people in prison, and we can all acknowledge that. And there are also still some people in prison that I don't want living next to my mama or my daughter. Am I speaking truth? Right? So we have to come up with something that is just going to be like really, like realistic. I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer to that question right now. I don't. But I know that once we start the dialogue, we're thinkers. We're human beings. We have the ability to think, and there's nothing we can't. There's not a solution that we can't come up with as long as we're brave enough and willing enough to stay involved in the tough conversations that need to be had.
And I don't claim to have the answers specifically to these, but I know these are discussions and conversations that we've had in our mutual political education classes as part of Oakland IWalk and Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee in general. So I'm going to start with the second part first, that we get a lot. What are we going to do with the criminals? What are we going to do with the rapists? What are we going to do with the thefts, the thieves, the people that are going to be drug dealers? And I always try to point out that this movement that we're advocating for, we support the 10 demands, and we support Pell Grants, and we support the prison end of the Prison Litigation Reform Act, and you make all the list of demands. We support them all. But at the end of the day, we're revolutionaries and we're abolitionists, and we don't want prisons, and we want a new society that will not have police, not have white police from Walnut Creek that come to Oakland and work for Bart and kill Oscar Grant, shoot him in the back because he has no conception of what it's like to be a black man or be a black person growing up in Oakland. But that goes deeper into, I don't want to get too far ahead, but to me, it's designed that way. It goes back right to chattel slavery, in that the agreement made by the northern industrialists to the southern landowners was that, look, okay, you can have your states' rights, we'll break it up this way, but we'll do it in such a way that you can keep your farmhands, but you can't keep them as slaves anymore. We got to have another designation for them. So it's a true fact that many people, many so-called free slaves, then got caught by these groups that later became modern-day police forces, posses, really is what they were. White guys that got guns and went around and looked for random black people and said, okay, no, you're breaking the law. Now you're going back. And a lot of times they went back to the same facility that they just had been so-called freed from. So some of those, Angola didn't stop production from before and after slavery. That shows the connection that we need to point out, and we need to recognize and study and teach as white people, as an organization, as a society, to teach that this is a system designed this way, built around white supremacy and racism, and we are not in a position to just open up the doors and let everybody free. We need an organized group of working class people that understand that we've been built from white supremacy. So with that understanding, then we can understand that things that have happened in society, like me growing up as a white kid, I didn't realize I was actually different than my friends until we were playing ball in the street and somebody was zooming down the street and said, you better get your white ass out of the road. And I said, why do they call me white? I didn't really think about it until I got older, and then I saw a little bit different, a little bit of treatment from the police, a little bit of treatment from shoplifting. I'd be able to get away with a little more than other people. So things I slowly began to notice, these are systemic issues. It's designed that way. It's designed in such a way that black and brown people, since chattel slavery, have been maintained as second-class citizens, and citizens that can be warehoused and used as commodities. They're just thrown away and hopefully put away at the least expensive cost. I think the way around that, and the way that we're going to start to teach that, to get into the second point, is that and again, about the crime, if we get to this point with this revolutionary situation that I hope and we build on, is that there would be a situation where there would be, there wouldn't be the incentives like there are now as I was growing up, and the only people we would see with Cadillacs or nice suits and clothes were the drug dealers or the people selling prostitutes and things like that. Those are the people that we looked up to and saw. But if we got rid of those, things, those images, those gods that we saw as young people, and actually gave in Detroit, they called Detroit in the 20s that one day was going to be the Paris of the United States. because so much industrialization was coming into Detroit, and there was going to be so much innovation, and so many people were going to be there, and it was such the highest median income of black people, all those things. And what happened? The corporations left, and they left Detroit, they left Flint, let them all defend for themselves. And that is a racist. It is a racist, but it was designed in such a way. It was designed in such a way for them to forget about those people, specifically along racial lines. So it's important for us, especially as white people, to recognize that. And also, I think what's important to recognize in these strikes is that these agreements to end hostilities is a way to get past that and to hopefully start to build a consciousness amongst our white prisoners that through unity and getting across these ideas that we're going to be a minority and that we're going to be treated this way. No, but rather that the effects that we can have on this system and the collectively what we can build together by agreeing to end hostilities and agreeing to end our racial differences. So I won't go on too much more on that. I just want to say that it is a possibility, not today, to end the prisons. Right now, if it was going to happen tonight, I say right now, Santa Rita and the prisons, we just change them all up. Everybody's in there, get them out. We'll get actual peers, not white people that vote, but actual peers that live, their neighbors, their direct neighbors will decide in this new society. But right now, all the prisons and facilities we have now, I say free them all, and then just put guards and cops in there for now, and then we'll figure them out later.
I just want to add, like, there are a lot of dudes that I left behind, right? That's ready, right? I'm not somebody that's gonna tell you let everybody go. I think that would be irresponsible of me, right? But I will say that there's enough dudes that's inside the prison system right now that are teachers, that are scholars, that are engineers, that are brilliant, right? That can actually come home and contribute to change that can happen in our community. And there are enough of us that are home all across this country right now, and I'm not going to say enough, but there are many of us who have come home that are working all across this country, that's running organizations, that's working with schools, that's working with children, that's going back inside prison facilities, that's working to educate even law enforcement about some of the effects that they're having. These are the type of people that we need home to help fix our society and to help get things back on course. All of us need to be at the table. We shouldn't be in here talking about rebuilding or doing something about prison and nobody from prison is in that room. We shouldn't be in here talking about how we gonna help people of color, and people of color are not in the room. And also, don't water my story down with just people of color, because I'm a black man, right? I have something around that where our story kind of gets watered down and we just all get lumped into the people of color. No, as an African American, I've been through a specific set of circumstances in this country that needs to be acknowledged, right?
Right on, that's very true. And one of the things, too, that I do want to say, we have to be careful, I think, about, I would like to change the dialogue or change the narrative around what crime is, because we talk about drug dealers. Well, some of the biggest drug dealers are pharmaceuticals, and we're all participating, right? Okay, right? Insurance companies, the way that what about our environment? Look at how our environment is being treated. That's a crime, right? That's a crime against our humanity. So I do think it's important to remember that, and then also, thank you. And remember, we are addicted to capitalism. Okay, so we have to be careful about what it is that about how we term things and perceive things, because we are under the system of capitalism and we're addicted to it, and we need to be honest about how we are living our lives addicted to capitalism.
Thank you very much for that. Just to make concrete what she said, and brother was talking about, you know, the pharmaceutical, yeah, they got people selling drugs in the informal economy or illegally, right? And people occasionally have overdose from this and die. Dig this. This Oxycontin thing, I got to reading about it, and was it fentanyl, Oxycontin. Do you know how many people died in 1 year? They just did a recount for 2017. 72,000 people died from overdose in the year 2017. Blew my mind. Now, there's enough of that blowing of the mind. Let's look. How could it happen? Well, one of the documents I was reading said that many of these victims were workers who the capitalists have considered redundant. Now, how do you consider a human being redundant? But I'll be more specific. People that were formerly steel workers, people that were formerly miners, particularly coal miners. As you notice, Mr. Trump likes to make false promises in that area. No such thing as clean coal. Auto workers. In other words, there has been a deindustrialization in America. Where do those workers go? What do they do with them? Well, if we don't organize them and strengthen them, I know where 72,000 of them have gone to their grave. Now look, on the question of the racial paranoia this gentleman raised, I think the sister said it right. The whole concept of race is not a biological reality, but a social conception that was constructed to justify slavery. If we agree with that, then you have to understand there's a cure for a lie. There you go. All right, so the truth does make some difference here. And I'm confident, and I've lived through this enough to see that even people that you think just ain't with it, if you put them in the right circumstance, they can start to get it real quick. Because when something like a prison strike occurs, people have to make a choice. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Right there, taken aside, the attendant rise in your consciousness can drown racial paranoia. As we say when we organize the workers in a trade union struggle, we ain't gonna go for that racial thing right now. We trying to get that money. It's not white against black, it's class against class. Understand that. So there's an answer to that problem. And finally, on the question of abolishing the prisons, abolishing the police, people, you can't talk about that as something we're going to do tomorrow morning, because we're going to live beyond tomorrow morning. So I like to look at it as a question, is that a goal? Is that a worthy goal to get rid of all of it? Yes, it is. So if it's a worthy goal, what we need to figure out is a transition to that. Not a one fell swoop, but how do we start today and take a step in the right direction, right? Lord have mercy. Well, thank you very much for thinking about that. Let's have the next person. Oh, hold on, Brother Williams want to join us again.
No, I just wanted to say that I wanted to acknowledge the people that's on the inside that even though the prison strike is going on, that they actually can't participate in the strike, right? So I want to acknowledge those people, right? Because there's a lot of both men and women inside serving life sentences, and that if they get caught up in a prison strike, they may never come home. So they can't afford to strike, right? So I really want to acknowledge that and say that we also, as we're thinking and as we're moving through trying to change conditions, we also have to think about them and think about that. And also that there's a lot of, because of the way things are changing, there's a lot of prisons that is allowing people to go inside and do work inside the prisons as well, right? And that is also needed. We have at least 35 prisons in the state of California. Some of them in these very remote and hard to get to areas, and people need resources, right? They need to know, not only just know that people out here fighting for them, but don't just fight for me on one day with a picket sign, right? I need a whole bunch of stuff throughout the year that's gonna help me get home and get access to the things that I'm gonna need to be a successful person out here. So I wanted us to think about that as well.
Yeah. Transition and support.
Yes, would you please give us your question?
Okay, I want to reiterate just first what you've been saying, and that's conditioning and indoctrination into the us and them, the criminals and the people outside. And we got to fight that because it's been normalized. Solve that myth, because education is about telling the truth and exposing things. So we want to start giving information as part of education, and I appreciate that eager concept to be spread around. And also, I want to say that no prisons, no cages, and that there's no living, feeling, sentient being that wants to be in captivity and exposed to cruelty and brutality. So we have to stop saying we treat people like animals, and under that is the message that animals are treated badly, and that's acceptable. We want to start feeling each other, whatever skin we're in, and that could be fluffy, feathery, scaly. We want to incorporate this concept to all beings, that freedom is important, and respect and dignity, so that all the beings, if we say we treat someone like an animal, it means we treat them with kindness and respect, and not in a confined, tight, miserable situation, and that we bring that message home with us. So please, let's remember, we want to treat animals, people, because people are animals, and all creatures and all feeling beings with respect and dignity. Freedom and justice, respect and dignity, and with that comes responsibility. We have the responsibility to bring that message forward and to make it a reality. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other people? Are there any other people that have any questions? Well, you should come on over to the microphone. I'm sorry, we can't hear you. I know you. She don't want it. Ma'am, we cannot hear you. So if you come to the microphone, everyone can hear what you're saying. There's a microphone right there, ma'am. It's real easy.
Yeah. Okay, my question is the prison system a secret society? Because the feeling I get is when I pass San Quentin, which I do often sometimes, and I can't go in, it feels almost like, well, what's going on in there, and why can't I go in? Is it like a secret society of some sort?
Well, I know what she means. Look.
The mic.
I just want to say, I think that's a dangerous analogy, right? Like, because when you start talking about secret societies, and it's almost like talking about goons and goblins, right? So I don't even want to go there with the secret society stuff. Prison is there. They don't let us in because they don't want us to know what's going on the inside, and we have an obligation to know, period. Period. Let's not go, I don't even want to go there with that conversation.
I was gonna just reaffirm already what he had said. There's nothing secret. There's no secrets. They just don't want you to know what's going on, but they know amongst themselves exactly what's going on. It's like Area 51. You can't get close to. You can't get close to any prison. There's a reason for that, because they don't want you to see them beating inmates or torturing them or doing those things. It's not a secret, though. It's wide open, and it's very clear that through the correspondence we get and through lawyers documenting and through court cases, we see the torture and the beatings that prisoners face and the torture through long-term solitary confinement. We know what's happening. It's not a secret what's happening. We know what's happening in those places. It's just designed that way to be more of a, I don't know, especially for me, it was very intimidating being a little white boy showing up to these yards and yards of fences and barbed wire and big, huge buildings and all this. It's intimidation. It's an intimidation factor for those that are visiting, for those that are living there for however long, and for those reasons. It's not a secret whatsoever. But again, I wanted to touch real quickly back on the this other part about what are we going to do about crime, and I think what we can do is basically use this model that these prisoners are using and this structure that we're trying to facilitate in IWalk by building inside branches of unions, which was the vision of George Jackson before he was murdered 47 years ago. That was his goal, was to build branches of union members of prisoners. That's a week across racial, religious boundaries that came together on common demands like these 10 demands that we have now drafted from through JLS and other inmates across several states. That's how we build the new society. We build it through building these cultures amongst ourselves and say, screw you, we don't need your grievances, we don't need this, we don't need that. We decide, because we run this prison by making it operate through the food and through the services, through the laundry, through the mowing, through the delivery, through everything else. And if we decide to, we'll shut it down. Same thing on the outside. If we're able to facilitate that strike from the outside and say, okay, for one day, everybody on the outside isn't going to do, for this day, September 9th, imagine nobody went to work anywhere in the world or in this country. Imagine how that would reverberate. I think that's how we reestablish this new society that we want to envision that won't need prisons, because we'll have a collective society or a collective system set up where we can make these decisions based on where our material realities are. And material realities will not be the same as they are under capitalist conditions. That's for damn sure.
But now don't be too hard now, because for people that don't know, that don't have relations inside, there is a shroud of kind of a mystery. And what that is, everything, the 1% is not, they're sometimes irrational, but they're not stupid. They know that it is better if people not pay attention to detail. They know it is better if people do not know that they consciously torture people, beat children to death. I could go on, oh man, we can go on with that. So in that sense, I think that's where the system might have been coming from. Okay, bro, all right. Go ahead, William.
Look, I spent half my life in that place, right? And so don't underestimate what I know about that place, or what I know about this system, right? And if I'm telling you it's not good to go somewhere, at some point, listen to the scholar that's telling you don't go to that place. Don't justify it with me. That's not good, because it defeats what we're trying to do, period.
Okay, but I think they do it, they really do want to do their dirty work in the dark, to be honest with you. Okay.
No, I gotta say this part too. What if, just what if, the people that we were deeming, and I'm saying you got those people who are just doing what they doing, right? They just doing it, and I get that part of it. But what if some of those people were just people who actually believed in what they were doing? right? How do you win their hearts and minds over to what we see as righteousness now? Does that make sense to people? Right? I'm saying this. I grew up gangbanging. I believed in what I was doing. I'd have died for that. Right? I'd have died for that. If you'd have came through my neighborhood and somebody did something to you, that'd have just been your fault. I was there to protect my neighborhood. So I believed in that wholeheartedly. Doing all kind of stuff that led me to the penitentiary. And somebody demonized me for that. They said, you ain't nothing but a gangbanger. You doing this and you doing that, and you'll never ever be able to change. And look at me sitting up on this stage, running my own company, going across the country, doing talks, right, working with formerly incarcerated people all across this country. My heart and mind changed. I work with everybody. I work with law enforcement. I work with people in the community, because when I walk in front of a class and talk in front of a class of cadets who were going into that system, and they asked me, they didn't know who I was. Because when I walked in there, the chief embraced me with the bro hug thing. So they don't know who I am. But when I tell them about my first run-in with law enforcement and how that changed my behavior and my attitude toward the police system, that gave them something to think about as they were moving into the system. And I'm not just talking about white law enforcement. I'm talking about other black people and people of color who were entering into law enforcement. I'm giving them a different perspective of how to deal with people, right? Because we can't just deal with everybody like everybody's the enemy. Is that making sense, or am I not tripping? Right? No, but you understand what I'm saying. But you understand what I'm saying. It's a difference. It's a way. There is a way, right? And sometimes you just got to go to war, right? I understand that. You take it from somebody who's been at war a long time, right? But there's also a way that we have to start to address and look at things in our community, as opposed to just everything is just this side versus that side. Because at some point we have to find the middle ground.
I would say, for my thing is that there's not Oprahs everywhere. Oprahs aren't born every day, but it's the idea. Pull you up from the bootstraps. No matter what you came from, you can do it, and you have shown that you can do it. You can spend half your life in prison and then still come in here and teach all these people all these things. You've shown you can break through that because you have that capacity and mental ability. But not the majority of people I grew up with. All my best friends don't have that ability. I'm saying, what if the material conditions were different? I was in the same situation, much different than you, with different colors, different privilege that I grew up with, but I had the same friends, that we were willing to die for the same neighborhood, the same block, and the same right to control the same drug trade. But what if none of those conditions were there anymore? What if all those houses were now ours? We didn't have to fight for that. We didn't.
Same thing. I believe in that. But we have to change that condition as a people together.
Right. Through the revolution, fuck the police. I wouldn't work with them. They are the traitors. They are the ones that we need to fight against. And we will not work with them as far as I'm concerned. They're antagonistic to a righteous, non-racist, cooperative society. And guards, prison guards, all of them, they contribute. Politicians, white politicians, they contribute to the system of racism that is designed this way to keep people warehoused, particularly black and brown people, in warehouses, not to get them out. These cadets you're saying that they want a job. They want to maintain their positions. That ain't a job. Climb a pole every day like I do. That's a job. Or do some kind of work that's productive. Enslaving, being an occupying force, particularly in black and brown neighborhoods, is not a job. I don't give a fuck.
It's not for you to speak for black and brown neighborhoods, right? So it's as somebody who live in black and brown neighborhoods. See, and this is the point. No, I'm defending humanity. That's what I'm defending, humanity.
Which is the 10
right? What I'm saying is this: when I went to jail, and my little brother came up, and my little brother started talking to me about packing pistols. I told him, you don't need to pack a pistol illegally. Go maybe so you can pack a pistol legitimately, right? Because it ain't like we run around this city, and at some point, you don't need protection from somebody, right? So let's not fool that. At the same time, I tell the homeboys on the tier, don't come tell me about what the police do, and then you run up on the fifth tier and you stick somebody and you think that that's cool. So I'm talking about humanity. At what point do we come together with you in humanity and say we have to come together with those of us willing to come together? Those of us willing. I'm not saying the people who are not willing, but it's not as simple as to think that just because dude got a uniform on, he has no humanity. The same difference that when I had a blue rag in my pocket, somebody didn't consider me a part of humanity. Or because I got this black skin on, somebody didn't consider me as a part of humanity. It's not that damn simple. And that's a simplistic way to think.
Can I chime in real quick? I'd like to chime in, if I may.
Well, of course.
My name's Aaron, and I was released from prison 8 months ago after 23 years. I spent half my life in California prison. And I'd like to support what my brother up here is saying. It's very, very complex. Young men believe in a cause, believe in a neighborhood, a block, a color. It's a tough struggle, and I think there's maybe some confusion arising. That's a different thing than the shroud of secrecy that the institution has over it. The institutions don't allow press inside because they don't want exposure. When Hugo Pinnell was murdered up at New Folsom by white inmates, how is it possible that this man, after 40 years in solitary confinement, goes to a joint and finds himself isolated with the 16 white dudes on the yard, and there's 500 black men on the yard, and is killed? The man's got something to do with it, and they don't want that exposure. And so they don't allow the press inside. That's maybe why it's difficult for you to see what's going on inside. As far as the people living inside, yeah, there might be some secrecy there. It's difficult. I can only speak from my experience, and I know the young people that I dealt with in there that believe in a cause. It's very difficult to break through that, and it's a complicated problem, and there are no easy answers. People talked about the crime problem. What are we going to do about that if we abolish prisons? Well, I'll say this: it starts with economic opportunities. When there's people that are marginalized and don't feel like they have a stake in society, and the only role models they see are maybe the kingpin on the streets with the car, and all of the male role models and the leadership, like we saw in the movie, have been stripped from that community. I'd say a big start is if we start sending these role models back out. There's thousands of them on the inside. They've let a small trickle out. I'm one of those lifers that's been let out. There's about 3,000 of us maybe in the last 8 years, and there's 35,000 more languishing behind the walls. So many great men, and it's a trickle, and he talked about the strike. It's a great thing, and if many of our brothers participate in that strike, they'll languish for even longer because they got to go jump through so many hoops to get out of that place. I don't have any easy answers. I just wanted to chime in and maybe lend a little clarity and lend a little support, and that's really all I got. Thank you.
Well, thank you, brother. You know what? Okay. Would this be our last speaker? And then what we want to do is we want to get back to the strike and talk about specifically last ideas on what we can do to help those men that are out on strike right now. Please.
Yeah, what is this prison strike about, and what is solitary confinement?
I think I'm going to let these two guys, for sure, talk about the solitary confinement. And Cole, definitely, I'm going to let you speak about the strike. But one thing that I do want to say is, first of all, I'm so grateful for the two of you speaking up here, talking about your experiences, the work that you guys have done also around the prison strike. These guys are taking huge risks. I mean, it's no small thing, you know, when Troy's talking about those that really feel like they just can't take that risk because they might have a possibility of getting out, especially after so much time of being in. And then the ones that can, they're also huge risks. They are already being retaliated against. But it is about their humanity. They are striking for their humanity. And in the end, it's not just their humanity. It's not just their human rights. It's our humanity on the outside here. We have to listen to those demands. We must listen to them and support them in any way that we can. I unfortunately left all of my information at home, but I would love to, if you go to Prisoners Human Rights Coalition on our Facebook page, or you go to the San Jose Peace and Justice Center's calendar, we do have some events that are happening. iWalk will be there on Tuesday. Do you have those things listed on the Cole on your? Okay. So there are some events that these guys will be in, because it's about being more educated around what these men and women are striking about, because it is important that we. They need you to support them, and they need us to get their voices out, to start shifting this dialogue and support what it is that they're doing, because they really, literally have their bodies on the line.
All right, I'll let Cole speak to the prison strike stuff specifically. And I do appreciate that is going on. I will say that they do need y'all support. They need people on the outside to know what's happening on the inside. They need people to keep a vigilant watch over what's going on the inside. That is absolutely needed. And thank y'all for that support. And please, if you don't do anything else, please keep that type of support up.
Specifically, this strike, the actual demands are listed back there with the short description in the beginning of why it was called for this year. There's a question of whether 2016 was the last strike, whether it was too soon to do it in 2018. And inmates, leaders of Jailhouse Lawyers Speak said that because of the outbreak at Lee Correctional Facility in South Carolina, where 7 inmates were murdered, basically they let all the multitude of gang affiliations in one pod and let them go at each other, and then literally stack the bodies up. And because of that, and because of the conditions, JLS has come out with these 10 listed demands. So there's a brief introduction of that. You can also find more on Jailhouse Lawyers Speak, prisonstrike.com. Solitary confinement. I don't remember what the specific question was to that, but that specifically is a form of deprivation. The one solitary cell I was in was a camera cell. Lights didn't turn off. You don't get a mattress. You don't get a bed. It wasn't a suicide cell. It's a little different. You get a smock. And you get the meal loaf, which everything mixed in together. But it's a dehumanization. It's go to the bathroom in front of a camera. You use shower once a week under a camera, under watchful eye. So it's most definitely solitary confinement is the last tool that they can use to completely dehumanize you and treat you like the animal that they want you to feel, as though you are just the number that you are, because then they can take away books, letters, everything. You're stuck with 4 walls and a bed and the meal loaf whenever it comes. And I think, just drawing back quickly to this new vision, I think this is the new vision. I think this is the new society that we envision and we hope to create through Oakland iWalk, and this organizing that we're doing is being able to build these racial boundaries, being able to build on these agreements to end hostilities, to recognize our commonalities, come together across those commonalities, and then recognize some of these demands that can be won slowly by slowly. And so that's why we agree with the 10 demands, and we will encourage, there's a number of different access resources back there to find, as the strike goes on, how people can be involved and assist. There's a number of local groups, Prison, San Francisco, Bayview, amazing paper. Please, if you have anything to donate, please give to them. They've been instrumental in 2016 and for many years. Again, with that, I'll finally say that the prisoners, more than anything, have done this through self-organization. They didn't come to this through us coming to them saying, oh, look, we have a union, we have these resources, we have these things we can offer you. It came from them coming to us, Free Alabama Movement coming to us, saying that we've talked to other prisoners, to other unions, and they want dues or they want to see how they could. We don't care about any of that. Prisoners don't pay money to be in our union. They have just as many rights as I do. They can bring motions to convention just as I can. And that's what we want to build as a new society that recognizes that we're all the same and that we can do it. We don't need these institutions that have been created on chattel slavery, that have been built on colonialism. And the only way it can be do it is through a revolutionary process that won't involve pigs on any level. And that's all I'll say.
Okay, well, I think that sums it up right there. So I just want to thank you all for sticking with us, and I hope that you converse with each other and so many others outside this room. Thanks for coming, y'all.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We have flyers in the back table, food in the back. We encourage you to mix and mingle and hang out a little bit if you're feeling it. Thank you so much for coming. LiberatedLens.org. And we also have a donation jar by the door when you leave. We would really appreciate any